All right, Gareth, let's move on to the big story in boxing that is developing, the crumbling of the Anthony Joshua Tyson Fury fight right before our eyes. You reported on Thursday evening after speaking with Bob Arum that this fight, and I'll just paraphrase here and let you kind of talk about where we are, but this fight is in some serious trouble. So where are we with Fury and Joshua?
Well, as you know, Bob Arum is Tyson Fury's USA promoter. Frank Warren is his UK promoter. And Bob rang me this evening and claimed that the what we're calling over here in the UK, the £200 million mega fight for the undisputed heavyweight title between Fury and Joshua is, I quote him, dead in the water for July or August, which counters claims from Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn, earlier in the day that the fight is a done deal. And I quote Bob here. He said, it will take months for the Saudis to do their due diligence on such a huge deal. It is not just a site fee. There are ancillary demands from the Saudis stretching into the broadcast deals and other things. It could take months for it all to play out. And then he said, it could even take until 2022, the way it looks right now. The fight in July or August is dead in the water as far as we are concerned.
So it sounds like Bob has some new information in the last 24 hours or so about where it stands when it comes to Saudi Arabia. Do you think, am I reading that correctly?
I think so. It looks like they've gone over the small print in the contracts and that there's still, a lot of due diligence for the Saudis from their side of the deal. I mean, it's not just a site fee. He was saying if it was just a site fee, it would be simple to get over the line. And I think they've obviously looked at that with the lawyers, and he's realized well, look, this deal in terms of getting this bit over the line, in terms of site, all that process, the heads of agreements deal, the final bit, remember, started way back in December the 12th, I think, after Joshua beat Kubrat Pulev. Eddie Hearn said on Monday morning, which was December the 14th, I think, we crack on and we get on with this and we get the deal done. And where are we? We're a day away from May the 1st. So it has taken an inordinate amount of time. I know you'll raise things like, look how long Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao took. It took like nearly 5 years, didn't it? And so Arum's saying, his view, the two fighters need to go and have other fights this summer while the negotiations for that fight in the Middle East conclude. I think, according to him, we're looking at November or December for that fight now.
So, you spoke with him. Do you get the sense that this is posturing, perhaps? Or do you think this is just the way it is when it comes to this fight? Because one of the questions I have when I hear Bob Arum or Frank Warren talk about Tyson's going to move on and take another fight is who and where and for what money. Because you and I both know Tyson Fury could have fought last December. He was penciled in for a date in December and then pulled out a couple of months before that. The reason he pulled out was because there was no money there. He could have fought, but there was no real money for him to face an opponent that isn't Deontay Wilder and isn't Anthony Joshua. And I get the sense, Gareth, in fact, I feel like I have a pretty firm grip on what Top Rank wants. Like, they don't want to be back in the Deontay Wilder business. That didn't do well for them. They didn't make money off Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. That underperformed. That needed to clear, I think, 1.1 million pay-per-view buys for everyone to just break even. And it didn't. It did around 800,000 buys. So I guess my question, it's one thing to say, we're moving on, but to where? And what do you do? I mean, where do you think that Tyson Fury could move on to?
Well, I think just to rewind a little bit, I suspect that, Tyson Fury's on a massive deal with ESPN, wasn't he? Yeah, or is on a massive deal with ESPN. perhaps they didn't want to put a huge amount of money into a fight that wasn't big enough in their view. If he was fighting, let's say, Agit Kabayel. So that would have come down to them as well, and maybe BT Sport in the UK not wanting to provide the whole of the sum for the fight. Obviously, Fury was disappointed not to have that fight. I mean, I think he's aired that himself. Who does he fight next? The logical fight is Deontay Wilder. Or is Bob suggesting that Tyson Fury takes a Tom Schwartz stroke Otto Wallin type fight, or someone in I can't remember now, is he due to do a mandatory or voluntary of the WBC?
Well, who knows? Who knows that WBC belt?
Yeah, exactly.
Dillian White, he's ready to go.
Yeah, maybe Dillian White. Exactly. Good old Dillian finally gets it, and that'll be amazing. But, you know, there is so much up in the air. I'm only hours, like a few hours from talking to Bob Arum and writing this story. Who knows? This might be the moment that leverages this fight actually happening in Saudi. You never know with these things. But if Bob had called you tonight, the nonagenarian Hall of Fame promoter Bob Arum, who's had everyone really in our lifetimes and beyond, you know, from Muhammad Ali to Manny Pacquiao to the late great, now I can say, Marvin Hagler and all these guys before them, you know, maybe something will shift. Maybe it will create the seismic shift. But if he'd rung you and told you these things, you would have published, wouldn't you? You'd have gone with it. Because it's Bob telling you these things, and he's clearly deeply frustrated. I think, as I've mentioned to you before, you know, perhaps because Eddie has dealt with the Saudis before, he was left to complete this bit of it. I mean, he's kind of come out and said, I'm like a one-man band getting this fight done. I just don't understand why they all didn't go to Saudi and sit around a table and get it done together, iron it out together, rather than this contracts back and forth that we've heard about. I think Anthony Joshua maybe fights Alexander Usyk, by the way, because the WBO is there, isn't it? You know, the mandatory. Who Tyson Fury fights at this point, I really don't know.
Well, that to me is the most glaring question here, because AJ could fight Usyk. I mean, I don't know where he could do it anywhere, you know, and still make, and you know the UK boxing scene better than I do, but when AJ fights against a guy like Usyk, he's going to make a lot of money, even without that live crowd. I don't get the sense that Fury's in that same position. Like, he needs a Wilder in the US or a AJ wherever to draw the kind of crowd and make the kind of money.
Dillian White would create noise as well. I think that would create noise, you know.
I just like the Wilder stuff, to put a button on this. Like, it's a very easy fight to make contractually, because you know what percentage of the pay-per-view both guys get. Theoretically, you could go down to Texas and put that fight on. Texas is about to put 70,000 fans into Jerry World Cowboy Stadium for Canelo Alvarez, Billy Joe Saunders. I'm sure Fury Joshua would do a big number at some outdoor venue there. So there's a live gate. But, you know, my understanding of those contracts is just that because nobody made money on the first one, and because nobody, in terms of the promoters or networks, did well in the first one, and this one, I would imagine, will be a harder sell. Just the appetite for that fight just isn't there in the same way it was a year and a half ago.
Well, I think the problem is the appetite isn't there because what we've done for 4.5 months is wait for the confirmation of an undisputed heavyweight title fight. You know, so it does feel like a fall, doesn't it? It feels like, you know, it's just not going to be what we were all expecting and wanted. So I can't disagree with you. I don't have an argument against that. I can only agree with you, you know?
Well, hopefully we hear something positive in the days to come.
Adrenaline dump, my friend. Adrenaline dump.